At 95, Clint Eastwood confesses, "She was the only one who could do that to me." Clint Eastwood was born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930 in San Francisco, California. Raised during the Great Depression, Eastwood experienced a modest upbringing that shaped his resilient character and instilled in him a strong work ethic. His early life was marked by frequent moves across California due to his father's work as a steelworker and migrant laborer. These formative years taught him the value of perseverance, humility, and independence, qualities that would later define both his screen persona and his real-life demeanor. Eastwood first gained widespread recognition in the late 1950s when he was cast as Rowdy Yates in the television Western series Rawhide. The show, which ran from 1959 to 1965, was a major hit and provided Eastwood with his first taste of fame. However, it was his leap into international stardom in the mid-1960s that solidified his place in cinematic history. Collaborating with Italian director Sergio Leone, Eastwood starred in the groundbreaking Dollars trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, For a Few Dollars More, 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966. These spaghetti westerns introduced the world to the iconic man with no name, a stoic anti-hero whose silent strength and moral ambiguity captivated audiences. Eastwood's portrayal transformed the Western genre, injecting it with a gritty realism that contrasted sharply with the cleaner, more traditional cowboy image of earlier decades. In the 1970s and 1980s, Eastwood continued to evolve, starring in and directing a series of critically acclaimed and commercially successful films. He introduced another legendary character, Dirty Harry Callahan, in Dirty Harry, 1971. This hard-edged, no-nonsense San Francisco cop became synonymous with justice delivered outside the bounds of bureaucracy, a concept that resonated deeply with a generation grappling with rising crime and disillusionment with authority. The film spawned several sequels and cemented Eastwood's reputation as a tough, uncompromising action star. Beyond his acting accomplishments, Clint Eastwood developed into one of Hollywood's most respected and prolific directors. His directorial career, which began with the play Misty for Me in 1971, showcased his keen eye for storytelling and his ability to craft emotionally resonant, character-driven narratives. Films such as Unforgiven, 1992, which won Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Director, Mystic River, 2003, Million Doll Baby, 2004, and American Sniper, 2014, revealed a filmmaker capable of exploring the human condition with depth, sensitivity, and nuance. Unforgiven, in particular, marked a turning point. It deconstructed the myths of the Old West and offered a somber reflection on violence, morality, and redemption. Through these works, Eastwood not only reinvented himself, but also contributed significantly to the evolution of American cinema, including multiple Academy Awards, Golden Globes, and a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Film Institute. Despite his many honors, he remains a deeply grounded individual known for his stoicism, minimalist style, and quiet sense of dignity. Off-screen, Eastwood has lived a multifaceted life. He's been a politician serving as mayor of Carmel by the Sea, California from 1986 to 1988, an accomplished jazz musician, a dedicated father of 8, and a passionate advocate for environmental conservation. What makes Clint Eastwood truly remarkable is his ability to continuously reinvent himself. At a time when many of his contemporaries had faded from the spotlight, Eastwood remained not only relevant but also artistically vital. Even into his 90s, he continued to act, direct, and challenge cinematic norms with recent works like Key Macho 2021 demonstrating his unfinished creative spirit. He is one of the rare figures in entertainment whose contributions span generations and genres, making an indelible mark on westerns, thrillers, dramas, war films, and biopics alike. Clint Eastwood, known for his steely on-screen persona and enduring presence in Hollywood, also garnered widespread attention for his colorful and complex personal life, particularly his numerous romantic relationships over the decades. Often regarded as a modern-day Casanova, Eastwood cultivated a reputation for being irresistibly charismatic and elusive in matters of the heart. Throughout his life, he has been romantically linked to a long list of women from both inside and outside the entertainment industry. Among the women he was known to have dated or had associations with are figures such as actress Anita Lois, the glamorous Van Doren, and stuntwoman and dancer Roxanne Tunis. His relationships also included celebrated journalist and food critic Gail Green, as well as French screen icon Catherine Deneuve, whose brief liaison with Eastwood was the subject of much tabloid speculation. One of Eastwood's most famous and publicized relationships was with actress Sandra Locke, but he also shared connections with women like actress and model Jill Banner, the sultry singer Keely Smith, and rising star Jamie Rose. Other names tied to Eastwood's love life include Hollywood actresses such as Inger Stevens, Joanne Harris, and Susan St. James, as well as activist John Seaborg. He was even associated with lesser-known women such as Megan Rose, Jane, Bridget Byrne, and Christina Sandra, the latter of whom became a long-term companion in his later years. Despite his high-profile status, Eastwood often preferred to keep many of these relationships out of the public eye, adding a layer of mystery to his already enigmatic persona. On December 19, 1953, at the young age of 23, Clint Eastwood married Maggie Johnson, a model and secretary whom he had met on a blind date earlier that same year. Their union marked the beginning of a significant chapter in his life. Despite the image of a conventional marriage, their relationship was complicated by Eastwood's early success in Hollywood and the temptations that came with fame. They eventually became parents to 2 children, a son, Kyle Eastwood, born in 1968, who would go on to become a successful jazz bassist and composer, and a daughter, Allison Eastwood, born in 1972, who later pursued a career in acting and directing. However, Eastwood's extramarital affairs placed a serious strain on the marriage, and by 1984, the couple had separated after 3 decades together. Their divorce, finalized in 1984, was reportedly one of the most expensive celebrity settlements of the time, with Johnson receiving an estimated $25 to $30 million. While still legally married to Johnson, Eastwood began a significant relationship with dancer and stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis, which lasted from 1959 to 1973. Their romance was mostly kept under wraps due to Eastwood's marriage, but it led to the birth of his daughter Kimber in 1964. Kimber was raised by Tunis, and her paternity was not publicly acknowledged until many years later when Eastwood's extended family and personal history began to draw greater media scrutiny. Despite the secrecy, this relationship played an important role in Eastwood's early private life and was one of the first indications of his pattern of parallel romantic involvements. In 1975, Eastwood entered into one of the most publicly visible and artistically significant relationships of his life with actress Sondra Lockhart. Their partnership extended both off and on the screen as the couple appeared together in several of Eastwood's most iconic films, including the outlaw Josie Wales, Every Which Way But Loose, and Sudden Impact. The two lived together for over 14 years, during which Locke became one of Eastwood's most prominent companions. However, despite their close professional and romantic relationship, Eastwood was allegedly involved with other women simultaneously and reportedly fathered at least 3 children during his time with Locke, a fact that later fueled controversy and legal disputes between the two. Their relationship ended bitterly in April 1989, leading to a highly publicized legal battle in which Locke accused Eastwood of deceit and professional sabotage. One of the clandestine relationships Eastwood maintained during his time with Locke was with Jazzaline Reeves, a flight attendant. Their affair, kept secret for many years, resulted in the birth of 2 children, Scott Eastwood, born in 1986, and Catherine Eastwood, born in 1988. For a long time, Reeves raised both children outside the limelight, and Eastwood's paternity was not widely recognized until Scott began pursuing an acting career of his own in the 2000s. Scott has since become a rising Hollywood star, inheriting his father's rugged charm and following in his footsteps both in style and career. Catherine has also dabbled in acting and writing, though she has remained more low-key than her brother. Following his breakup with Sondra Lockhart, Eastwood's next significant relationship was with actress Frances Fisher, best known for her roles in film and television, including Titanic and Unforgiven. Their relationship began in the early 1990s and lasted several years. In 1993, they welcomed a daughter, Francesca Eastwood, who would later become a television personality, actress, and model. Like many of his previous relationships, Eastwood's partnership with Fisher eventually ended, though they have remained cordial and cooperative in raising their daughter. Clint Eastwood married for the second time much later in life. On March 31, 1996, he wed Dina Ruiz, a former television news anchor. Their marriage was more conventional and public than many of Eastwood's previous relationships, and Dina often accompanied him to premieres and public events. The couple had one daughter together, Morgan Eastwood, born in 1996, who occasionally appeared in the media spotlight during her youth. However, despite their seemingly stable marriage, the couple began to drift apart, and in August 2013, Dina confirmed that she and Eastwood were living separately. Their divorce was finalized in 2014, closing yet another chapter in the actor's eventful romantic life. In total, Clint Eastwood is known to have fathered at least 8 children with 6 different women, though some reports suggest there may be more. He has generally remained discreet when it comes to discussing the full scope of his relationships and family, often choosing not to confirm specific details in interviews or public appearances. This discretion has only contributed to the mystique surrounding his personal life. Nevertheless, Eastwood has remained close to many of his children, several of whom have followed him into the entertainment industry in various capacities. Despite the complexities of his personal relationships, Eastwood's legacy as a father, partner, and Hollywood icon continues to captivate the public imagination. At 95 years old, Clint Eastwood, an icon of American cinema, known for his stoic demeanor, unshakable toughness, and near-mythical status in Hollywood, offered a rare and vulnerable confession that stunned those who thought they knew the man behind the legend. In a quiet moment of reflection, the weathered actor and director, whose life had been filled with fame, fortune, and a long list of romantic entanglements, said just 9 haunting words. "She was the only one who could do that to me." He was speaking, of course, about Sandra Lockock, the woman whose presence in his life had left a scar so deep and lasting that even 9 decades of living couldn't quite heal it. The words weren't said with bitterness, but with a deep, almost spiritual ache, as though he were revisiting a chapter of his life he had never truly closed. Sandra Locke was more than just a co-star in films like The Outlaw Josie Wales, The Gauntlet, and Bronco Billy. She was Eastwood's muse, his equal, and perhaps the only woman who ever truly challenged him on both an artistic and emotional level. They met in 1975, and from the moment their eyes locked on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales, something shifted in Eastwood. He was no longer just the steel-eyed gunslinger or the grizzled anti-hero. Around her, he was human, exposed, almost tender. Their relationship, which spanned over 13 tumultuous years, was defined by intense passion, artistic collaboration, emotional turbulence, and ultimately a painful and very public unraveling. And yet, despite everything, the lawsuits, the betrayals, the silence, Locke had left an indelible mark on him that neither time nor success could erase. When Eastwood uttered the words, "I couldn't walk after," it was not merely a turn of phrase or a figure of speech. He wasn't referring to a physical injury, but rather to the emotional paralysis that followed the end of their relationship. In a life filled with motion, film sets, political interviews, award stages, director's chairs, Locke's departure had stopped him in his tracks. He described the breakup as a kind of collapse, an emotional shutdown that left him disoriented and hollow. "She broke something in me," he once admitted to a close confidant, "and I never figured out how to fix it." In a man who had survived the grueling pressures of Hollywood for over 6 decades, fought in war, directed Oscar-winning films, and commanded respect with the force of his presence. It was staggering to imagine that he had once been brought so low, not by an enemy, but by a woman he loved. Clint Eastwood, who had always maintained control in his life on and off screen, seemed to surrender that power, however briefly, in Sandra Locke's orbit. She was a brilliant, sharp-toned actress with a strong will and a razor-sharp mind. Unlike many of the women he had dated before or after, Locke wasn't content to stand in his shadow. She demanded to be seen and heard, and she saw through the myth of Clint Eastwood to the vulnerable man beneath. And that perhaps is what made her so dangerous to him. She made him feel things he didn't want to feel. She made him question his own instincts. She made him hesitate. Years later, as he sits alone in his Carmel estate, surrounded by awards, scripts, and portraits of a lifetime spent in the spotlight, Eastwood's thoughts often drift back to Sandra. Not the scandal, not the lawsuits, not even the films, but the quiet, stolen moments between takes. The way she looked at him when no one else was around. The way they laughed, the way she could silence him with a single look or draw something raw and real out of him when the camera wasn't rolling. "She was the only one who could do that to me," he said again, softer this time, as though repeating it might make it less true. For a man who had lived through nearly a century of change, war, artistry, and love, Clint Eastwood's most enduring wound wasn't a bullet or betrayal. It was a woman named Sandra Locke. And even at 95, he still carried her memory like a hidden photograph in the pocket of his heart, worn around the edges but never discarded.